I'd like to call to order the October 26th, 2020 budget meeting for Plymouth Township Council. And at this time, we will please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to
and
the
to the
republic
republic
for
which stands
stands
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Thank you. All right, several of the annual items on the budget agenda for tonight, but the first one is fortunately not an annual item, but certainly a big one. So first tonight to discuss is the Plymouth Township building renovation.
Yeah, I guess we got some emails today from Stacy and some work that Nick Keynes had come up with for a geothermal system. And I apologize because it all came over this afternoon and, like today. So I don't know if all of council had a chance to look at it yet, but and then Rick also visited the Towmenson Township building that had a conversion from a gas system into a geothermal system, as well as the Bucks County Community College, which was a brand new system geothermal. So I don't know, Rick, do you want to take a minute to just explain to council what you found and what you thought? And then we
Yes,
have our consultants too.
sure. So yeah, I was able to visit Towmenson Township, who converted from a natural gas to a geothermal system, and then also visit Bucks County Community College, which actually has two systems in the two separate buildings that we visited. One is a heat pump system, and the other is a heat sink, or Nick would know the actual term, but it's a little bit different system. It's run with the VAV boxes and the air handlers, which is a plus as far as control and also the ability to mix air. So the Towmenson, they're still having some problems. The project's not done yet, and I think based on talking to their maintenance guy there, actually their IT guy, a lot has to do with it being they tried to retrofit their existing equipment to the geothermal equipment. They tried to reuse their old air handlers, which caused problems with the size of the coils and the fans and the motors and some of their piping. They reused, and so they had quite a few issues. On the other hand, the Bucks County systems were new. And talking to their head of maintenance, they love them. They work really well. They've had no problems. So it was nice to be able to see something like that after visiting the one that's having a lot of problems. So I guess in our situation, because we would be going all new ductwork, all new piping, all new equipment, all new air handlers, we would be in the situation of the Bucks County Community College, which is a good place to be.
Yeah. No.
Rick, I got a quick question for you on the Bucks County. Was that set up? It was a lot of open spaces, or was it set up kind of like we want to have with the township building? Because I know you mentioned that difference creates control problems.
Yeah, so both. So in their office areas, they had the small areas with maybe one or two heat pumps doing a few different areas, and they do have the issues with the control. So someone has the thermostat, so they might control 4 or 5 offices or a conference room and a couple offices, and they do run into some problems. We noticed that they had a few of the portable plug-in heaters in some offices, due to those issues with trying to control a few offices with 1 or 2 heat pumps. The other building was their science building that also had offices and labs and larger spaces, but also had smaller spaces. But because of the system with the VAV boxes and the air handlers, they were able to control those spaces, whether they were small or large, much better. And Nick might be able to speak a little bit more to that because he actually, I think, designed both of those systems.
But how about the thermostats, Rick?
So yeah, the thermostats at Talmenson, they were blank. They had no numbers on, no digital display. There was just a knob where you could either +2 degrees or -2 degrees is the only control that you had.
Oh, that was Tomenson.
That was Talmenson, yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes. So I don't know if Nick wants to add to that or if I got it all right, Nick, or not.
For the most part, you hit all the main points. With the science building, it's a ground source heat pump VAV type system. So I presented the VAV with hot water reheat with the boiler before. There is a way to set up a VAV system to work with a ground source heat pump, which is the new option that I included with the information that I sent out today to the architect. The other building that we had looked in had more of the traditional style heat pumps, which then that limits how many thermostats you can have. With VAV, you can have one thermostat for each room very easily. With the more traditional heat pumps, typically with smaller areas, smaller offices, you usually have to group a couple together. So you have some limitations there. The other big advantage to the VAV is your big compressorized equipment is going to be heat recovery chillers. So we can have all that big machinery in one spot, probably down in the basement. With the more traditional heat pumps, they're spread throughout the building. So now we're having to disturb day-to-day operations to service the equipment. But for the most part, I think you did a really good job of describing the two systems.
One other thing I also wanted to mention in the offices at the college, their equipment was in closets, which was nice. All of our heat pumps are now, we have 36 heat pumps at the municipal building, and they're all in the ceiling. So, you get problems with condensate drains clogging and water leaks, and it's difficult to work on units when they're up in the ceiling. Sometimes you can't easily get to them. They're over someone's desk or in a spot where it's not really conducive to get up there and work. So having them in closets was nice.
Yes, and we've watched them try to lift old ones out of the ceiling and new ones into the ceiling, and then bolt them up there as they're going, and it's a very, very scary kind of thing to watch.
So if you had them in a closet, then you wouldn't have a shelf above like a coat rod. It would just be a coat rod then.
Now, the closets that they showed us were pretty much delegated for these heat pumps. I mean, there was I guess a Christmas tree in the one with a bag over it. I guess they stored it in there, but they were pretty much solely for the heat pumps.
And on the floor, right?
Right, they're on
Yeah,
the floor. Yes.
Mhm.
Excuse me, one of the things that we try to do is, to dedicate those closets to the heat pumps, and then we sound insulate them fairly thoroughly so that anybody that's in an office or adjacent room do not hear the humming sound that come from the unit. So we found it's better for the facilities if we put them on the floor versus the ceiling, and then the sound isolate them so that nobody really hears the machinery when it's running.
Will that be an issue if we're still looking for space?
I think we can, if we decide to go in that direction, I think we'll look at areas where we can put the units. They don't necessarily have to be next to the office. We have some areas where we have some areas where we could put maybe 4 or 5 and then run ductwork out from there and then engage the office. It really, in the particular job that Rick went to, these offices were kind of tucked into dormers. So we had to be creative where we put the closets where the roof was sliding down between the dormers, if that makes sense. It's truly unusable space. So we put mechanical equipment there, and then we were able to feed the ductwork out. And that was just the nature of that little building. This building, it's going to give us a lot more opportunities. It's a lot more flexible for us. So we can run through options where we can put those heat pumps and then run the ductwork. I'm sure we'll explore that if that's the direction we want to head in.
I have a question about one of the things that struck me, I guess because of the pandemic,
in one of our previous handouts was the air distribution that minimizes virus transmission and optimized ventilation. How does this compare in terms of, trying to isolate and minimize transmission of viruses, flus, whatever?
So the newer option that I brought to the table, the option 1C, which is the VAV ground source heat pump, that gives you all the same capabilities with respect to filtration and air distribution and ventilation as the other two VAV options. It's basically equal because we have large central air handling equipment with large motors, so we can put thick filters on there. And we also have that economizer capability to bring in 100% outside air. It's really equal to the other VAV options in terms of its ability to minimize transmission of viruses.
One other thing I wanted to add is, I guess, and Nick maybe ought to speak to this, but the air handlers, they're pretty large pieces of equipment. And I believe that, I don't know if all of them will, but at least some of them will have to go on the roof. So just keep that in mind, that does take up roof space.
I mean, at this point, we have some flexibility with the design to kind of drive where those units go. Right now, it's attractive to put them on the roof, at least some of the larger units, maybe keep some of the smaller ones down in the basement, but we were definitely looking at some rooftop options. And that would be for all VAVs, whether we do the ground source heat pump or the hot water reheat or the electric reheat.
And Nick, you will have the heat recovery on the VAV option, correct?
That's correct. That's one of the really neat things about the ground source heat pump VAV option. So I don't want to get too far into the weeds. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but the way that a VAV system works is it actually uses hot water when it's cooling. So during the middle of the summer, you have a need for hot water. That's where they get the term reheat from, because you're cooling the air down to reheat it back up. And that's what's really slick about the ground source heat pump version is basically the heat that you're using to reheat is coming from your cooling heat of rejection. So the heat that you've removed from the building to cool it down, you can then use it to put it back in again, and you don't have to expel fossil fuels or create a new energy source. So that's a pretty nice feature.
If I could just ask a more general question, and I'm sure we discussed this, and I just want to make sure. And as I'm looking at these, I guess it's now 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 options. Can someone just explain to me what the air source heat pump is again, and how that's different than the ground source heat pump?
So there's 3 different. So basically what a heat pump does is it just moves heat. So if you want to cool a building, you're going to take heat out. If you want to heat the building, you put heat in. And when you talk about a heat pump and you talk about the source of that heat pump, it's where is it going to take that heat to? So like for a ground source heat pump, you're going to put the heat in the earth or take the heat from the earth. Water source heat pump, you're going to take the heat from water or put the heat into water. For air source, it's going in and out of the air. And many of you probably have the system in your home. I do. It's basically just the same unit that you have that sits outside of your house, just runs in reverse. So during the summer, it's letting the heat go. During the winter, it's pulling the heat out of the air and bringing it into your home. So it's just using the air as a place to take heat from and to reject heat to. It's sort of a more simplistic version of the other systems, but same theory.
And when we talk about sort of the environmental, the green aspect of each of these, I know that just looking in terms of use of natural gas, obviously the ground source heat pumps do not use that. Where is the air source heat pump come in on this? Is that using more traditional electricity? Is it like, where does that fall on the green spectrum?
So the air source heat pump does not use any natural gas either. And the way that operates is there's a compressor that's a part of your cooling system and heating system that runs. And the way that that works is when it gets very cold out, that compressor runs very fast, and that creates heat, basically. It can still pull some heat out of the air, but when it gets down to 10 degrees or so, there's not a whole lot of heat left. So it just runs hard, basically, in order to get that heat in. But there's not really, any gas heat or anything like that. We will probably have some supplemental electric heat in the building too, some like electric resistance radiators, things like that, to kind of help with it. A lot of times those systems, when it gets very cold out, they do tend to struggle a bit more. So we'll probably be supplementing it with some baseboard electric heat too.
Hey, Nick, one question. I think maybe what Chris is looking for is what is the fuel source of that compressor? Is it running on electric? Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I might overcomplicate it that one.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
One thing I do want to say too is that, because you are running your compressors in the winter, the compressors run more often on these types. So that's, I think, where some of the repair costs, come in. You're running your compressors more than you would for the I guess the natural gas package rooftop units. So they tend to wear out more quicker.
True.
Does anybody else have anything to add or questions?
Yeah, I guess, we've kind of designated Mr. Monero and Mr. Gannon as sort of our subcommittee. They've spent a lot of time reviewing all the options, so I think I'd like to hear from them what their recommendation would be for the building and the heat source pump.
You want me to go first, Chris?
Yep. Sure. Go ahead.
As Marty had said, it's been a long process, I guess, and I do want to say I've enjoyed it. I've learned quite a bit, and this end of it has not been my experience. I'm more in the construction end, but anyway. I've changed my mind numerous times, I think, throughout this whole process due to comments and input from committee members as well as the rest of council. And most recently, I know I was looking at doing everything the way I called proper, for the next 40 or 50 years. But in the midst of our pandemic and, we see our financial future that's not quite as secure. We're in a good place, don't get me wrong. But I think tonight my mind would be just on the building itself would probably be the first option, would be the necessities that we need to do, and then possibly add a few things that we want to do that make a lot of sense for right now. So I'd like to see if we can't come up with a number tonight, a budget or so that we can work with and then try and fit our needs into that. I think we've been doing just the opposite. I think getting what we want out of that and then see what the budget is, per se. So that's the first half of your question, Marty. And then the second would be on the way that we use our energy in this building. I think it has a lot of merit as long as the numbers are correct with looking at this option 1C that Nick just proposed. I haven't seen the numbers yet on what that's actually going to cost compared to the gas system. But if we get the control we need for the comfort for all of our employees, I think it's worth looking at a little closer at this time. So I think that's where I'm leaning. Even if it costs a little bit more in the short run, we can stick with our green goal and commitment and see what the turnover is going to be like in 30, 40 years.
Just going to say, I didn't print it, but I think it's 3 million. Can you help me, Stacy? Was it 3,045,000? I forget what the number was.
That's
$3 million,
Something like
$3,045,000 is the new
1C
yes.
estimate.
So 1.9 was the gas and 3.045 was the ground source.
Right, with all the extra comfort that.
So 1.1.
Otherwise, it was 2.9, and now
Right.
it's about 3,045. So
Right. Well, I wanted to make sure we got everything in there we need for,
Yes.
control and comfort and
Mhm.
apples to
That's
apples.
What that's looking like for the geothermal option.
So 1C is the greenest and the most expensive. Is that, Dave, the bottom line about 1C?
And for initial cost,
Right.
I think if Bill and Andy's, research was correct on when it needs to be replaced, how it needs to be replaced, which portions do, along with operating costs, it might actually be cheaper in the long run. I want to take another look at that, but that's what I'm leaning towards. I'm not committed to that 100% yet. But I think if we come up with some type of budget, we can have KCBA move forward and try to fit our needs into that budget.
You have a number?
Well, before we get to that.
I'll wait till
can I-
Chris, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think Dave and I are in agreement, and I think much like Dave, I've also sort of gone back and forth, and right now we're faced with a lot of uncertainty, and I think that it would be very dangerous for us to do too much right now and to really be stuck. I mean, mostly because we just don't know where we're going to be at financially a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. In a best case scenario, things turn around quickly, and maybe after we've done all of the necessities that we need to do first, then maybe we can look at additional projects down the line. But Rick has already budgeted out over the next 5 years or so what this building is going to need in terms of its basic necessities, and it comes pretty close to some of those numbers in that lower end that we were looking at, with the addition of a little bit of extra space and some tweaking here and there. So if we looked originally at, hey, let's just do what we need to do, let's do maybe something a little more, and let's do a ton. I think right now I feel most comfortable with us really going with what has to be fixed. And I compare it to like your own house. If you need to get a new heater and you have to borrow money to get that heater, does it mean that you're also gonna, well, while I'm borrowing money, let me go and fix the bathroom and the kitchen? In some aspects that makes sense, but in others it's like, well, I really don't need to do those. And we're spending other people's money here. So I think for now we do what we need to do, and we don't bite off more than we can chew for the time being. Now, in terms of some of these things are long overdue anyway, and we really have no choice. I mean, the minimum project here of the roof and the heater and the boiler and a couple of these issues with space, like we have no choice. We have to do that. There's no not doing that. If anybody doesn't want to do that, it's irresponsible. We have to at least do that. In terms of the systems here and what we're going to look at, I mean, I also want to do I want to commit. We've committed to this Ready for 100. We've committed to getting off of fossil fuels, and we need to honor that. That's a big statement we made. It's a big vision we have. It's a goal we have, and it's us doing our part. So it would be hypocritical for us to say that we want to commit to that and then not do what we need to do to live up to it. But in terms of exactly which one of those options we pick, I do just think we're going to have to be careful and say, look, if we're going to budget X number of $1 million, and we're going to take up half of that for one piece of it, what else is left? So I think we have to find this balance between doing as much as we can without letting one piece of it cost too much, but then at the same time, honoring our previous commitments. So I'm with Dave on us opting for sort of the only the necessities at this point to start off with, and trying to see if we can fit into this this probably that 1C option, if it fits, and if not, I think maybe we have to put everything into a big package here and say what's the most we can do, certainly in a green system, without taking up our entire budget for this project. So I probably said a little more than I needed to, but I think that sums up where I'm at.
Chris, I have a question, or to both of you, Dave. what we have to do, does it include any upgrades to the Public Works building?
I guess I'd yield to Karen or Rick on that. I don't know exactly what we discussed with that last time.
I think it would be whatever the upgrades to the township building, whether they be roofing, electrical, HVAC, LED lighting, that stuff. I think it would be the same case, in my opinion, for the Public Works building.
Because that's just as old as this building, right?
Right. Yeah. It also, the roof there is from 1991, so it's ready to be replaced. So I would think whatever we do to the municipal building, we would also do to the Public Works building.
I agree. I just wanted to make sure that was part of the discussion.
I agree also, but part of adding some things that we want, I like the ideas of the covers for the police cars, so they don't have to waste time, shoveling off their cars, maybe put solar on top of that. I like the idea of protecting our equipment outside that's sitting and rotting in the sun and the rain. I think those are things that we need to look at very hard and say, it's worth the money to spend now, so we don't have to spend it in the future. Other things would be nice to have, so we don't have to spend money in the future, but I don't think they make a lot of sense right now. So that, I just wanted to clarify my view on things we wanted to add to that smallest package.
And so when we're looking at the smallest package, will that include adding an addition to the building for the needed space so that people aren't working literally in closets? And will it include an ADA compliant entrance that doesn't ice up the way it does now on the north?
I think so. I think we're required to spend a portion of that on ADA. Whatever we decide the renovation budget is, some of that's got to be spent on ADA. I know we talked about, maybe gaining some space in the auditorium lobby. So I think so, Karen.
Thank you.
One other quick question. Will the smallest package also include anything for the police department? I know there's an awful lot that they were looking to gain from this. Lockers and the storage that they need. Nothing there?
Well, so I think if council makes the decision that they, want to maybe go, to get what we need, and then look at what that costs, and then look at what we want, some of the extras, and then come back with a budget of what those things cost.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So that you can decide then, because it's all going to be dependent on how much to raise the taxes to cover, the money that we need to borrow. So if the list, depending on how long the list is, then you need to do that. I mean, I have talked to the chief, and we talked about what's really, really important. And, and I think that not everything is needed as much as other things. So we'll just have to, we put a price tag on each item, and then you can kind of pick and choose what the items are and how to build the budget that way, and see if, if it comes in line with the amount of taxes, the percentage that have to get raised to pay for it.
Kathy, one of the questions I asked that helped to decide was, and it was to Karen and Rick also, was if we do the minimum that we need to do, will every department be comfortable with that? In other words, I don't want people to still feel cramped, still feel outdated, and, with the desire not to come to work because, for whatever reason. But I think the consensus was that, if each is refreshed, whether it's paint, carpet, there's new lighting, new ceilings, areas will be redesigned, not to the extent, the major, but everybody should be satisfied with that. And then with that answer, I think that helped to decide for me.
Okay.
And that included the police.
Dave,
That's
does that mean there would not be an addition to the building for the space we need for code enforcement?
I don't believe so.
So
You
they'll
can
not,
correct me on that.
Well, we were just wondering if there's another way. And some things I guess we would have to pass by the architects to see what's possible, to possibly use some space, the space behind the auditorium. And I'm not sure if there's enough space, maybe even make the auditorium smaller, but I know the floor starts to slant. But to create a conference room within the existing walls in the back of the auditorium, then the current conference room in the engineering department, that department, like the walls could come down and the area could be rearranged, including that office, the conference room, to provide for more space in the code department. And so it would provide better, spaces for the workers, and also possibly recapture a break room, for all employees there, because we've taken a part for the conference room and another part for an office. And then that, doesn't leave any break room. And there really should be some kind of break room for employees. So there were a couple new ideas floating around. Or that medium in between one had an addition either out the back behind where Chris and Jim sit, a small addition out that way. In the master plan, that was the medium option, included a small addition. So kind of wanted to go back and take a look at a couple other ideas that were kind of floating around to see what's possible.
Karen, if I could, the space behind the meeting room or the auditorium doesn't have an interior connection. You have to go through the auditorium to get to that space. One of the things when we had the addition is we put out a corridor on the one side of it so the public could access that rear space that was just underutilized. I'm sure as whatever decision gets made, we'll have to take a look at how we can best utilize that area. I just want to make sure there wasn't any public access to it other than to go outside and go up the steps to get to it.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody's going to want to go outside to go back inside, but we would obviously have to take a look at some options there for you to see what works best for you.
Yeah, so we could control who uses the auditorium, say on council meeting nights, no one would use it. And then during the day, all the departments can use inside to go in. And the public can come in from the steps, which, we had an idea that maybe those front steps should be redesigned, because Karen, the ADA accessibility is, to me, a must, and for this public building. And so that should be redone, and maybe even out on that landing, there's a possibility for some space or addition to kind of make that work. I'm not sure. But these were all some different ideas that kind of came up.
So one thing we consider, Karen, is if in the event we pursue that, if there is a small addition, we try to make sure that vertical circulation is under the roof or under the inside if we can, so that the facilities team doesn't have to go out there and try to remove that ice on that north side. We know the sun doesn't get on it. So in the event that we pursue that, we want to do something that eliminates that slip issue. We could transition interior wise down to the exterior if we can.
Right. And one of the major, I think, once for the police department included something in the front lobby area where they would have an interview room kind of on the outside, but it could be in that same location where it is now, maybe either just redesigned in the current lobby or even possibly bumped out a little bit onto that landing that's there now. And just kind of look at that to maybe change the stairs, the ADA accessibility, and get the entrance at the police that John, that was one of your big things, right? For the lobby area and the separate interview.
Yes, Karen, it
space.
was. In discussing it with Rick, though, I think we initially saw that it could be done with the existing space also. So it wouldn't be necessary to break out. I think we could use that lobby area where the first set of doors are and just take a small portion of that. So I don't think it would be much disruption. In fact, I think Rick thought that it wouldn't be a major job there.
Right.
I don't know if Rick remembers that conversation.
Yeah, I do. It was in the vestibule there. It kind of butts up to the records room there. So we did talk about having a little meeting or an interview room right there, sort of in the vestibule.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So we're thinking, if you go back to the lobby before we kind of cordoned it off for police and pre-COVID days, our lobby is actually probably possibly larger than it needed to be. So we were wondering if there was ways to gain space just from within the existing outside walls.
Yeah, part of that existing lobby, I believe, was for that auditorium when you had a bigger day or bigger event, so you had enough room for people to spill out into.
Okay.
But obviously you can, it is still a little big, right? So you can do some other options
Mhm.
to work with what you're
A
talking about.
couple things to look at.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Mhm.
So first of all, I will say that because he's very invested in this process and he's been very patient and gives a lot of information, I am going to give Bill 5 minutes. But before I do that, are we ready to say now that, look, we want to go with what needs to be done option? The next step is to go back and look at that list, pull on it what we want definitively, and then say, while as we're doing that, say, but nothing more than this number. Like, here's what we're going to look at without exceeding this price tag. Is that, or I guess we go through, we pick out everything we want, we turn it over to our experts, they tell us how much it costs, and we decide if we can do it all. Is that
Well, we said two different things. I mean, I think I'm more comfortable with a budget and having it fit that at this point.
I tend to think that, things can expand if they know that you're just giving them the option to. If you give a figure, then pencils kind of get sharpened a bit more.
Well, I think we know what the number is, but I think we need to look at the items first and then make sure they fit that number.
Okay.
Does that sound all right? I mean, I think we
Yeah.
almost did that. I think, Dave, when we met the other day, I think we have gotten pretty close to that. I think we just need to, I guess, finalize it all and then include in that our heating and air conditioning system.
Yeah, but I still think we need to give a figure, like a cap, so we can see, hey, this doesn't fit, this does fit. Maybe have a couple options. Well, if you want this, it's going to increase X amount where everything fits into it, but we can do something a little different. I kind of agree with Kathy that if you say these are all our wants, what's it going to cost? You leave some variable in there. I would rather see us fit to a number at this point, because I think throughout this whole process, it's been ballooning, and not in a wrong way, but when you start looking at things that you want, and every little thing adds up. So I think, at least I'm at the point now where I can say, we roughly know where we want to be. And if it's going to be a little bit more, we can come back and say, okay, we need to do a little bit more because this, and this makes a lot of sense. But I think at this point, I think they should be able to fit what we need into what we were talking about.
Okay.
Do we have a number?
Well, do we want to hear from Karen or Rick or Karen Bramblett yet, or?
I was
I'd
going
like
to
to hear
say,
what they have to say.
when you're getting involved in a construction project of this scope, that that you're going to find some things, especially in a renovation of a 50-year-old building, that number is probably just going to automatically creep up from just some unknown things that you start opening some things up and you don't know they're there. So I think that generally, in my experience, that number usually tends to be a little higher than you set it at anyway.
I'll repeat, do we have a number?
Chris?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just wasn't sure if we wanted to actually get into that tonight. But like, if you guys are saying we have to commit to a number tonight,
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, I've been on council 7 years. We've been talking about this, I think, since I've been on it 4 years. And we got to make a decision. If it's not tonight, it's got to be at our last, within the next couple of weeks, I think. I'm just,
Yeah,
I know
I
I'm
mean,
not going to be on council when we break ground, but I want to be alive when I see the new building.
I think that we're going to do that. I guess I would say that I think, again, maybe I'm wrong here, but we sit down and we look at that list, but we know what we want with the number, but like Rick just said, that number might creep up a little bit. So I think we finalize that number when we finalize the budget, and we put everything involved in that, including what we're spending and how we're raising that.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I'm getting a lot of feedback, by the way, on here. Someone's microphone is on. It's causing some.
I'm not hearing anything.
Mm-mm.
Me? Sorry. Maybe it's just me. Sorry.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, from a public works standpoint, if it means anything, there's no disgruntled employees. We're happy to work in the space we are. I know it's a difficult time, so, I think, with something similar for cover for our equipment, something similar to our salt dome, we can do something like that for $27,000 is what I priced out to get our stuff under cover. And I know Rick's has a difficult time with, the HVAC and all that in the roof, which I think is a priority, and the ADA compliance. But as far as space, we're able to function at a high capacity, at a high level as it is. And, I certainly appreciate everyone thinking about, what you guys can do to make our life better here, but there's no complaints. I know Rick has a really tough job trying to keep this place cooled and heated. I think that's the major priority. So if it means anything, we appreciate everything that council does for us, and things are good on our end.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that.
Chris, in my mind, just, I guess to sum it up for my mind here, if we go with option 1 and we add things to it, and we're not going with option 2 or 3, the middle ground or the high ground, it stands to reason that our numbers can be somewhere in between those first and second options. And I think
Correct.
that's probably good enough, at least in my mind.
I would agree with that. I mean, I think I can say that we know what those different price levels were. And I think what we're saying is we want to be somewhere between those first two, preferably closer to the lower one. But we're going to have to couple that with, in our budget, with how much we want to make sure that we're, I guess, being safe, like with our capital fund in the future. And I think there's a couple financial issues that are coming together at once. So when we look at revenue for next year, I think we have to consider both of them together. But I would say that of those numbers we looked at, I would agree with Dave there. We're looking at somewhere between the first two options, but closer to the first. So that's roughly somewhere between 10 and $15 million, I guess, roughly. Dave, would that suffice?
I think that's a good way to put it, and it covers both not really saying a number, but leaving a little wiggle room for what we need to do or want to do, I guess. But I think as long as KCBA is okay, we need to have an answer relatively soon. So I guess Karen and Rick have some work to do to get things narrowed down as quick as possible. And I guess you and me, Chris.
So
Yes.
And do you think council is ready yet to decide on the HVAC system type, or?
Well, all right. So before we do that,
Kind of depends still.
before we do that, I want to give Bill the courtesy to speak here for a couple minutes. Bill, if you could try to keep it less than 5, that would be ideal. If you don't mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and council and architects and guests. So yeah, on the environmental board, from our viewpoint, a couple of things we learned during trying to help analyze this for you. There is a social cost of carbon. So the fact that we as a society are not accounting for how much greenhouse gases we're putting up in the atmosphere, that is actually impacting all of us. So all the storms, the wildfires, the hurricanes, everything around the world has just been going up and up in cost. So we can say we're not going to have to pay for that ourselves, and we'll take the easy, low cost natural gas option, but that's not the right thing to do for the world or for our community. So I applaud you if you go with the geothermal choice, because that is the best overall cost. When we average the cost over 50 years, we showed in our analysis that the average cost per year is lowest with the geothermal. So you've already got a financial reason to pick the geothermal. Then if you throw in the social cost of carbon, part of your pitch to the public is to say, hey, we're doing the right thing here and we're avoiding all of this greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, which would cost this relatively to society. So we're picking the best, lowest cost for Plymouth Township to be a citizen in the world to make the right decision to go forward on that. The second thing we learned is that we would encourage you to make this building as zero energy as possible. So whatever you do up front, we want to make sure you put in the highest insulation, the best windows, and that incremental cost that you put up front will more than pay back. Over 50 years, we calculate it to be a $1.3 million savings with the geothermal system. So you could say, well, yeah, we're going to need to give the architects and the engineers a little bit more money to help them design a zero energy building, but you realize that that would have been cost that you would have been paying over 50 years. So you take that, 1.3 million and you just say, hey, we're going to put some of that into making it a zero energy building. By doing so, the cost of the HVAC system is going to be reduced because the capacity needs will be lower. And then the maintenance and the operational cost of those will be lower also. And then as a result of that, getting to that zero energy level, let's say we could reduce our energy needs by 50%. That's what we did that calculation on. Then we look at, when solar PV is reasonably cost effective enough to balance that out and take out the electrical usage we have left. So we go with the geothermal, we're all electric. Then when we get to the point where we can afford the solar on the roof, then we put in the solar and we take away that whole cost of that electricity that you're paying for each year going forward. So you're actually getting a benefit on top of a benefit by leveraging all of these systems together. So I'd really urge us to go that direction, because if you're going to start doing things to the roof and to the building structure, this is the best time to put in those efficiency measures and make sure we do it well up front. The cost savings are going to be more than pay back the difference to be able to redesign that, and you'll get a better output. The building will be, the other advantage of a building that uses 50% less energy is that the comfort of the building will be much more even, because there won't be these wild swings between a high and low temperature, because the building will be able to keep itself insulated well enough that the range of temperature change won't occur as frequently. So it'll be a more comfortable building. So you get three benefits here. A lower overall cost, an ability to offset your electricity cost totally, and then a more comfortable building. So I really urge you to take another look at being able to make it a zero energy building. But thank you for moving towards the renewable energy choice, which is going to be the best for our community and all of us.
Can I ask a question of Bill?
Sure, David, thank you.
Bill, I do remember if we do decide to go with the ground source, there is a possibility that it might not work after they do a test bore, correct? I mean, it's not 100% guaranteed we can actually use that system.
Yeah, so I was going to ask if the architects could tell us if the water source system would be the next choice to keep it renewable.
Well, one of the things we will do is a test well, Dave, as you're aware, and we'll set that up. and see what results it has. We do know your neighbor, the Colonial Middle School, is sitting on rock, and it's pretty firm. I'm more inclined that you will be able to use a geothermal if you want to. However, I'll pass over to Nick to cover which system we would go from there.
So our other options, if we don't want to use fossil fuels, is the VAV with electric reheat and the water source heat pump and the air source heat pump. Electric reheat is not very energy efficient from an energy use standpoint, especially if we're looking to really minimize our energy use. That would not be what I would recommend. The water source heat pump, I would agree, is the next best option in terms of the quantity of energy used. And in the option that I gave, I used a gas-fired boiler, but we could kind of go back in with the same type of system that you currently have and use an electric boiler. If that was the path that we were going to take, and we wanted to completely avoid using the fossil fuels.
And Nick, what do you think about supplementing that with solar hot water so that we could take some load off the electric boiler?
That can be done because solar is variable. You know, we would want to size the boiler, assuming that we don't have a solar load, just so if we have shady days and things, we're covered. But you know, for the most part, whenever it's sunny out, you would be able to pick up that energy savings. Certainly is not a bad idea.
Okay, thank you. So, you know, going back to, I guess, you know, Karen's previous question, I would like to see us, as we move forward here and try to price this thing out, to try to base everything off of this ground source heat pump 1C, the one that we got tonight, and just see where that puts us with everything else. But I guess I'd like to see us use that as our base to determine our cost.
Hey, Chris, one thing we'll probably bring up in discussion, if I can, going with that, if there's an idea that down the road Plymouth will expand that building if they needed to, we'll talk to you about whether or not we want to put those extra wells in and have them tied to the manifold, and then you won't have to engage those wells should you expand in the future. And you know where the well field will go, it's going to be critical, so we know not to put it where a future addition might find its way. And those will be some things that we'll talk to you about, so that we can at least get the best competitive bid at the time we end up putting this out to bid.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate that.
And then can we schedule the test then to make sure it's going to work? Is that what we should do?
Yeah, we'll set up, we have a proposal that we've been using for that, and we'll work with Nick and we'll get that ready to go. I'm sure we can get that bid out and get those results. Well, I guess it may take a month to get the bids in, and then we would to schedule a time for them to set the well up.
So it's a proposal you would send to me?
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
send it to you.
okay.
Yep.
They will cap the test well, and then you, assuming that the test is successful, you'll be able to use that as part of your system.
As one of them? Yeah.
Correct, yeah, correct.
Okay, great. Yeah, and yeah, we'll talk tomorrow, because with bidding limits and things. So if that's under the bidding threshold for one, I'm not sure. I think it might be.
It's under the bidding threshold. I would get a couple bids anyways. It's a good thing to do. We know a lot of the vendors and the companies that do it, so we can easily give you those lists and contact them directly, or we could help you contact them.
Right. Okay, great. Yeah, we'll talk. Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else that we need to go over on the township building for right now?
Yeah, I got one more comment based upon what Chris Lochavo said. You know, we have employees in the township building and we have employees in the public works building. I think we need to make sure that we do something for that public works building to make it so that it's comparable to the township building and comfort for our employees, or at least something so we don't do everything for the one building and nothing for the other. I'm just trying to generalize it, but I think we need to look at some of the things, even though Chris says everything's fine, and I expect him to say that, but I still think we have an obligation to make sure that if we're going to do the minimum, we got to do the minimum at least for the Public Works building.
Okay, we'll put that on our list, I guess.
Yeah.
Karen, would the next step be for us to meet, like our committee again, to meet Dave and I with you guys and sort of expand on last time?
Yeah, we can set that up again. And also, I think John was going to set up a meeting for Thursday at 1, possibly. So those emails were going around today. So yeah, we should get back together. Definitely.
All right. Anything else on the building for tonight before we let some people go?
Good.
No, but I think we made good movement. We made some progress. So thank you.
Andy has his hand up.
Oh, sorry. He's muted.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to know quick, Nick, is the life expectancy of 1C the same? Is it 30 years? That's a large factor.
I'm anticipating the same life expectancy as the traditional ground source heat pump is, I would call it the smaller heat pumps. The biggest replacement factors to consider though with that system is replacing compressors for the heat recovery chillers. And if you noticed, I also included a table, I don't know if you've gotten that yet, where I kind of broke down some of the different system components. And so the air handling systems in 1C don't last as long because we're proposing right now putting them on the roof. So anything that you put on a roof, it's just going to be exposed to that roof environment, you know, the sun beating on it, the cold and so forth. So there is some maintenance things that kind of go along with 1C in terms of those two items.
Thanks.
Sure.
Is the maintenance of the 1C option something that our employees can do, or will they require hiring outside contractors?
So one way to think about 1C is it uses more of a central plant type approach. So we have these three, we call them chillers, but you can think of them as a boiler that works in reverse, basically in the basement. And they're big, sort of, they're not big, but they're complicated machines. And those are things that your maintenance personnel are going to be able to do some basic things on, but they're likely going to have a service contract on it and get somebody out there professionally to service it and work on it. Any of the other system components, like the pumps and the air handlers that are going to be spread around the building and the VAV boxes, those are all things that I would anticipate that the building maintenance can work on. I think Rick might want to kind of verify that, but for the most part, other than those chillers, everything about 1C is fairly simple.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of that stuff is pretty technical. From what I saw on my visits, you know, there's variable frequency drives. There's a lot of electronics. I think we're perfectly capable of changing filters, tightening belts, changing motors, changing, things like that. But I think the technical stuff, I think we'll have to have a service contract with someone.
From what Rick indicated, that's kind of what I anticipated. So what I said is accurate.
All right, anything else? All right, so we'll reconvene on that and kind of have some final decisions, I guess, for our last budget meeting. All right.
Good.
All right. So we can move on, I guess, to Harmonville if everyone's ready.
If I could just say something first, Chris. I gave council a one-page summary shows the assistance that both fire companies have gotten this year. I mean, there's always questions about that. I had also given council the financial information that Harmonville gave us, and you should have all that. And in another packet, you should have the financial information that Plymouth Fire gave us, and you should have that in front of you also. I just want to know, what the documents are. I'm sorry, go ahead, Harmonville.
Hello, everybody. Just a quick introduction of ourselves. John Hoffman, I'm the fire chief of Harmonville Fire Company. Chuck Semler, he's the treasurer. He's got the guy in the middle. And Dave McGuigan, the chairman of the trustees, over to our left here. Just first and foremost, we'd just like to thank council for their unwavering support of the Harmonville Fire Company to continue our mission of providing the best fire and rescue services that we possibly can to our citizens here in Plymouth Township and all the visitors that come in daily. Everybody has the sheets in front of them. So if there's any questions, we're ready to field them for you guys. And I'll turn it over to Dave for the capital improvements for the firehouse.
Good evening, council. So our 2021 capital improvements that we're looking to do is our roof at our main station at 2100 Butler Pike. The roof was currently put on in 1991, 1992, and has met its life expectancy. We're looking at up to about $200,000 to overlay the roof, and it would probably be upwards of almost 250 to 300 to completely rip off and re-insulate and put on a new flat roof. A few years ago, we actually had an infrared survey done and to the station, and they gave us about 2 to 3 years left on this roof, and we've come to that point. As you see in the 5-year plan, we're going to hopefully replace some engine room doors at our main station. We're looking at expanding the parking lot at our main station, put in a Plymouth exhaust system, and the Station 2 rebuild replacement, which the committee has met with council, and we have met, and we're really getting the ball rolling on that. And our 10-year plan is to replace all the heaters in our Station 1 in the engine room. I'm actually going to turn it back over to John to go over the apparatus replacement plan for the Harmonville Fire Company.
All right, the apparatus replacement plan stays to the course of what last year's projected to council was. The next apparatus that we have for replacement is in the 2006 engine. That's going to be replaced in 2024. There's also a truck in 2027, and there's a lot of talk, and it's my vision to try to condense some of the fire apparatus that we have here at the township. So we're looking to see what the best move for the fire company will be in the future, but it's most likely going to be a condensed fire apparatus a little bit here, so we don't have so much redundancy. Anybody have any questions on the apparatus replacement fund?
John?
Yes.
I just noticed, the first item, the rescue truck, is that really only expected to last 15 years? Most of the others are in the 20s.
We budget 15 with the hope for 20,
Okay.
but they just don't make fire trucks like they used to. There's a lot, any manufacturer anymore, there's just a lot of issues here and there. We shoot for 20, that's our goal, is 20 years, but realistically we need to think 15 because of resale values and stuff. So if we keep a truck for 20 years, obviously the resale value goes way down. And we just went through that with our old rescue truck. It was pretty hard to try to find a buyer for a almost 20-some-year-old fire truck. So it's, there's just a lot of thoughts in that. The thought is 15, but ideally it's going to be 20 for replacement.
Okay, just curious. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, is there anybody have any questions on the proposed budget for 2021? There is a slight increase for 15,000, and that is to employee wages and benefits. So this past year, Harmonville did get actively involved in a IRA retirement plan for our 3 full-time career staff. We are shooting to hopefully, we've got some numbers out there to be able to supply them a short-term disability, which I know was a main concern of theirs, that they would like to see some type of short-term disability. And just the other 9, there's a 9% increase, 3% each for cost of living for increases for each full-time employee. The rest, pretty much the 2021 proposed budget is exactly the same as last year's.
Any questions from council for Harmonville? Gotta ask him one. We gotta ask him one question. We can't let him off this easy. I don't have any questions.
Well, again, I just like to thank everybody for their support. Police Chief Merciades, thank you very much for your support to the fire company throughout the years. And council, thank you guys so much for what you do for us, because we couldn't be here and we couldn't, give the services that we do to our town's residents without you guys and without the support that you guys give us. So we really appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
We appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
Tim, did you have anything additional for Harmonville?
I was just wondering about the reminders, I guess they call it the stipend program. I guess we'll be getting information on that. Or...
Yes. So the stipend program goes from November 1st to October 31st. So I'm just waiting for this month to round out, and you should have that within the first week of November. I'll get that over to you and Karen so you guys can review that, and then we can issue that out to the volunteers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That was a nice flyer you mailed out.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, we were lucky enough to secure a SAFER grant for our recruitment and retention for that $380,000. So a lot of stuff, you see a lot of stuff on social media now about recruitment and retention. We've done some videos recently. They've been really popular on Facebook. And then, yeah, we're getting the mailers out there. We're trying to really hit our target audience pretty hard to try and recruit more volunteers, because, I'm not getting any younger, so we need to start recruiting some people. So,
Any interest yet? Like anybody come around?
I'll tell you what. Since we started, and we started a little late, obviously because of COVID, but we started really hard around the mid to late August. We've already had 3 new members join,
Great.
and that's pretty good. We'll obviously, we always like to say we'll see how they pan out. Volunteering is, especially in a busy fire department, is a lot of time.
Sure.
So not everybody understands the time commitments that really go into running a volunteer fire company. So
Good. 3 is good so far.
All right. Thanks, guys.
and thank you.
All right. From the red trucks to the blue trucks, time to go to Plymouth.
You hear me?
Yep.
Okay. With me this evening, first let me start. I'm Jack Haliniak, the treasurer of the Plymouth Fire Company. Also in on the Zoom meeting is our president, Adam Heffelfinger. I want to start by saying, John Hoffman, you're a young buck. This is my 51st year with the Plymouth Fire Company. You guys do a great job, and if you can be around as long as I have, great. Anyway, I want to thank the members of council, the other township officials for hearing us out here tonight. I know that, as Mr. Creelman said, they sent out some information to all the council members. We totally understand with COVID, and somebody mentioned it when you were discussing the needs for the township building, the difference between needs and wants. We're not, we're very mindful of the amount of money that the township needs to spend on the township building. And it also lets us know that, if you let things go too long, it costs a whole lot more money than you think it's going to. But anyhow, as far as Plymouth Fire Company is concerned, we sat down and looked at needs and wants. And we felt that what we really need was in the 2021 budget to address our career firefighter situation. And you have a request that was in the packet that Tim sent out. The Plymouth Fire Company is looking to add an additional staff member. In order to get that going as reasonable as we can, we sat down and figured that we would like to have a third person on our first out truck during the daylight hours, which we think is a major safety consideration based on standards, because there's always a great possibility during the day shift, because of working conditions and things like that, where that first truck only would go out with the 2 current employees. We really want a third member on there. So our proposal to hire an additional 40-hour-a-week staffing, but doing it with permanent part-time employees. Our operations staff believes that we can do that, preferably with 2 employees working permanent part-time hours. That obviously will save a good deal of money on benefits and things like that. We're also proposing a salary increase for our current part-time employees. We do have a list of PRN as needed part-timers. And we believe that as far as the part-time employees are concerned, that we've got to pay them a minimum of $20 an hour. Probably should be more. But again, times being what they are, I guess we could probably make do with that number. As far as the full-time staff is concerned, we are would like to increase their wages for the coming year by a minimum of 5%. We did a 3% increase to them last year. I still think we need to get them up to higher standards based on what firefighters get paid, not just locally, but in the state. The fire company is going to be implementing a 401k savings plan for all our permanent employees, which would be the 2 full-timers. And if we institute the 2 permanent part-time employees, we would be doing some matching. We don't have a figure on that yet, as we are looking at firms to administer the plan. So we would hope to get that started by the first of the year. We've incorporated that into our current budget. So you'll see on our budget request, we're not actually looking for additional funds for the 401k for the next year. I think we can manage that, and we've been tightening our belt pretty well. We did have some expenses based on COVID. We were able to get all the necessary personal protective equipment that we needed. We found sources. We got it as reasonable as we can. And we think we've got a great situation going right now at the firehouse, the station for disinfecting. And knock on wood, we think, over the course of the last 6-7 months, we have not, and again, I'm going to knock on that wood hard, we haven't had any infections. We've had a few people quarantine because they thought they might have been in contact with people who tested positive. And that's worked out pretty well. We've had reason why, of course, we want to incorporate additional staffing. It's a safety issue, as I mentioned earlier. Also, COVID has taken its toll on the volunteers a little bit. We know some people are not as active as they were in previous years. Older people, such as myself, have pretty well shut down, at least temporarily, because of age and situation being susceptible to major problems. We do catch the virus, so we could always use the additional help on the career staff, but we think going forward that's going to be necessary. So you have our budget request for the year for 2021. Anything above that would be greatly appreciated, obviously. On the situation with capital expenditures, COVID got us shut down pretty well. We had some things we were going to do in 2020 that became very difficult to meet with contractors and do a great job. So they've been kind of pushed off until the spring of 2021. We did have a major project at the station this past year, which we got through it with COVID, and that was the implementation of the Plimavent exhaust system, which we did get a federal grant that covered a lot of it. We did in our own budget money for heater relocation and things like that. So As we get to the spring of 2021, we're going to have to do some more insulation of our engine room. You'll see that on our capital program. We're currently doing some work on the swale. Those of you who understand the situation, there is a swale that runs behind the fire station on Caldwell Lane now that is supposed to take any runoff water from the homes in Cardinal View. That has, over the years, filled itself in a little bit. And I think, that's just nature taking its course. Plus, we also have reason to believe that some of the residents contributed to that too with some of the work they've done on their properties. But we're going to be spending some $7,300 to fix that swale in the next month or so. We've had a number of complaints from the residents, which we've taken to heart, obviously, and we'll get that situated, and that's in our program. The biggest thing for next year, we are going to pay off the loan on our telesquirt. When that was purchased, the fire company elected to finance most of it and not take the money from our capital account until we saw what needs we were going to have in the future. We've analyzed that situation, and we believe the prudent thing is to pay off that loan, which the first opportunity we'll have to do that is November of 2021. We'll do that and then start taking the annual payments that we're making on that and allocating it to our apparatus and capital account. We don't foresee a new major piece of apparatus until, I have it somewhere, I think it's around the year 2026. Well, there's a small truck in 26, 28 would be the major truck. We also are looking at that major purchase come 2028, which would be one truck replacing two. Again, trying to downsize the fleet a little bit as the future comes to us, and we start to work more and more with neighboring companies, besides just obviously the township companies, Harmonville and Plymouth. So that's one of our plans. The only thing the plan doesn't include right now, which may have to be added, kind of came up after the budget figures were put in, and that may be the need for a small response vehicle, AKA command vehicle, that may come up in the next year or two, which we think we can handle that from the current funds and the apparatus account, both our own at the fire station and also those funds available for the township. That's pretty much it, I think. Adam, you have anything you want to add to this?
No, Jack, I really don't have anything else. I think you hit on all major points on that.
I'm open to questions, comments. I know there were a few council members that were present at that meeting that was held with the fire employees, the career staff. We heard what they said. We think we're trying to address that. And also look at, safety for them, look at their benefits. We do currently give them disability insurance, dental insurance. I believe what the big dental and all that's included with the township. We give them a disability and life insurance. That's part of our budget right now. So they do have a life insurance policy for a decent amount, I think, and also short-term and long-term disability, in addition, of course, to the workers' comp that we pay on their behalf. So open to questions, comments, suggestions.
I've got a few if I can start. Jack, you had mentioned there was a couple projects that you pushed to 2021.
Yes.
Were they the insulation or the repaving or the sign?
Actually, it was, well, the drainage, the swale just came up. So that's kind of, we had to throw that in there because we weren't expecting that there was a problem there. The engine room insulation, which should have been done this year, again, was pushed back because the Plymouth vent installation, the exhaust system was pushed well back. It just finished. And we'll do that also in early 2021, the 15,000 that's on there. The parking lot, we had hoped to do this fall. That'll go to spring because the parking lot is crumbling, quite frankly. It needs to be resurfaced. We also are looking at the possibility of adding some additional parking, and then also looking at what problem that'll cause with additional impervious coverage. Yeah, and we may need some engineering on that, and also possible some drainage improvements to go along with that. So that's a project we also pushed back, along with the sign replacement, which those were all really 2020 projects. Okay. Excuse me. Margot, excuse me a minute.
That's all right.
I have a grandchild here who wants to speak to you.
We thought that was Margot calling you from the other room.
No, it wasn't. Believe it or not. We FaceTime with my granddaughter, one of my grandchildren, like clockwork around 7:30 each night before she goes to bed. So I'm not getting any younger either. I've got 5 grandchildren now that go from 5 to 2 months. So life is good. And like I said, the sign replacement, it's really an antiquated sign. If you've seen it in front of the firehouse, it's the old plastic slap-on letters. So we're looking to do something there.
Yeah, I wasn't asking why you were doing, it was more, was this in last year's or this year's budget, not next year's? In other words, were you pushing those jobs? You don't need money for them.
Well,
They should have been in the budget,
we've
correct?
accumulated the money for them.
Okay, so the numbers that are on
So the
here are not
numbers are
needed.
kind of left over from last year's budget, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear.
Yes, I'm sorry, Dave.
That's okay. My second question is on your revenue, on the miscellaneous. It looks like you had a huge drop off from the previous 2 years. Is that because of
Well,
COVID or is that
what's included
unexpected?
in there is COVID shut down our hall rental situation, which was going very well. And that hall rental situation is what we used for membership retention expenses, the banquet, other types of things that we've found over the years that in order to keep volunteers, you need to keep their families happy. You give them a reason to show up and do all that work and miss their dinners and whatever. So we've put a lot of effort into spending some money on families whether it's breakfast with Santa, the annual banquet, whatever. Okay. And until 2020, those monies always came out of our hall rental situation, which was pretty good. If you remember, we appeared before council not that long ago, right before the COVID situation started. We were hoping to get involved in another state convention, and a lot of expenses might have come from that account also. Of course, that got shut down by COVID. It got thrown out by the state. It's a thing of the past. There will be no more state fireman conventions the way we planned them. But that's why miscellaneous is probably down so much, because we're not getting any revenue at all from that.
All right, thank you for that. And my last one for now is that there are no federal grants this year?
Yeah.
Or next year, I guess?
Again, we're not counting on anything right now. Nothing's in the works. There'll be some state funding, hopefully, which we spend on equipment, firefighting equipment. That generally comes to about $13,000-14,000 a year, and it's a wash. It's whatever comes in, we spend. So it really has no effect on the budget. As far as an AFG grant is concerned, we may attempt. We don't have anything in the works right now for that. We were very happy to get that Plymouth system. We've been trying for years to do that because it's a $100,000+ project. And we were very, very lucky to get that, because I can't tell you how many organizations I've talked to that have been turned down for that. And we managed to get it, knock on wood. The odds of getting that size grant 2 years in a row are not very good.
And that is reflected and you're not spending it in the expenses anyway. I just was curious about the federal. Okay.
Questions, suggestions? You touched a little bit on membership retention. It's difficult. Chief Hoffman was correct. It's difficult to get people. We've been lucky. We've gotten 4 or 5, and we have about 3 right now that are coming around and trying to be active. The problem, of course, they face is when they want to join, they want to be firemen. And then they find out how much training and time is involved, and they slowly walk away. we've been luckier than a lot of fire companies in the area. We've got a lot of legacy firemen. I've got 2 sons involved. Others have, brothers, sisters, so we've been lucky there, but I also know a lot of members my age that joined around when I did, and their families, sons, daughters wanted no parts of this. And yes, we did have a female firefighter at one time, but my oldest daughter is now a burn center nurse, and she considers herself too old to fight fires anymore. But there's no reason that women can't do this. I think she proved she could. We've had others try. They weren't quite as successful as she was in getting through it. And maybe it's because her old man pushed her a little bit. I don't know. But we certainly will take them. And, I'm very proud of what she did. And, she's always been very happy to, come back around to, mentor any females we would get. We just haven't gotten them.
All right. Any other questions for Jack or Adam? Sam, anything from you?
No, I don't.
No. All right. And we do, I don't know if I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I do appreciate you guys, both companies addressing some of those employee concerns that were discussed in the meetings. And hopefully we can get to a good place on that.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that, setting up that meeting, and council has always been very good to the fire companies. I mean, like I said, I go back a long time to a lot of people at Plymouth Township, and it's been a great working relationship, and we hope to continue that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If nothing else for there, we'll move down to sanitation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, council. As you can see on the sanitation, I guess the one thing that's interesting is the full-time ASME has gone down despite our 3.5% increase per contract. And that's really the 2014, the new pay scale has really come into effect and has really shown they're making 60% of what the other scale was making. So we hired 5 new laborers for sanitation this year. And now we're starting to see it in the numbers. Pretty much we held the line. You're going to see the biggest expense is in recycling disposal costs. Just 8-9 years ago, we were actually making $12 a ton, and now we're projected to be paying about $100 a ton for 2021. So it's a huge shift. So we have to just be prepared for this bad recycle market right now. Any questions?
Just a comment. You mentioned about the 2 different pay scales. I just want to forewarn council that there will become a point in time when there are more people at the lower pay scale than at the higher pay scale. And that will become a negotiating issue in the future. I've seen it happen.
Thanks, Marty. Anybody else comments or questions for Chris? All right. That part was easy. Public Works.
Well, I think Public Works, we dropped the line. You can see that we've held the line or dropped in many cases, and our budget's been reduced, and we've been very responsible over the years, and we continue to do so. And sometimes Public Works can be unpredictable, as you know, and things can happen. But we have a great mechanic staff that keeps our trucks running great. And we're blessed with that. So things have been going really well. Our bottom line is less than it was last year.
Good. Any questions for Chris on Public Works?
Can't argue with the budget being less than last year.
I got a quick curiosity question for you, Chris, if I could jump to street lighting.
Sure.
The electricity, your year to date, 3/4 of the year is gone and you're at half of the budget. Was that due to the good rates you got from Pico, or is?
Yeah, Tim Creelman can answer that, but yeah, I mean, with the streetlights
Just
are,
curious.
yeah, there's still 978 streetlights, 928 taps. But yeah, it probably is.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Just curious.
Partly the LEDs too, right, Chris?
Yeah, that certainly plays into effect, but we still, all said, I think in the last 3 years, we've probably maybe 200 LED lights. But because we're still paying that fixed distribution charge, it's not significant. So I'm sure it's the rates.
Chris, what a percentage, roughly estimate, percentage of our lights have been replaced by LEDs at this point, street lights?
Maybe 20%. Yeah, as our heads go, as the Cobra heads ballasts go, we'll replace them all with LEDs.
Thank you. All right, anything else for Chris?
Just want to thank all the employees. I really enjoy reading the emails and letters that you pass along from all of the very grateful residents that we serve. So your department makes us look so good as a township. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great time. It's the best I can remember that guys are stepping up and really taking that one good deed a day to heart, and it really shows. It makes a difference.
Going down the highway aid. Go to page 13.
In highway aid, for the first time, we took our street paving to liquid fuels. And we had some success. It was, it worked out this year because snow was minimal. So it's always going to be we'll have to try to figure out if we have a bad snow year, what we can do paving wise. This year, like I said, worked out well, and we'll hope that we'll keep our fingers crossed so we have a mild winter again, so we can pave as much as we normally do. But really, what we pave, if we're going to continue to use liquid fuels, is going to determine how much snow money we've spent with salt and labor and the like moving forward. All of our snow plows, snow equipment, and the like come out of a special account equipment budget for liquid fuels that is earmarked only for equipment. So that money can't be spent for anything but equipment. 20% a year from our liquid fuels money goes to that special equipment account. So all of our snow plows, any kind of snow equipment is purchased through that highway aid fund.
Any questions there for Chris? All right. Moving down to police.
All right, thank you, council. Looking at our proposed budget for 2021, we look for ways that we could conserve and we actually were able to come in $223,000 under our current budget. I just wanted to highlight some of the areas. Our ammo budget, which is 4228, we were able to reduce that budget category by 21,000 by more accurately reflecting what we utilize and what's necessary for training. Under our uniform budget, 4238, we reduced that budget by 17,000 by a better accountability and replacement of uniforms on an individual as needed basis instead of taking care of whole divisions or squads wholesale. Our K-9 budget of 4242, we reduced that budget by 19,000. Our intention is to retire one of our K-9s by the end of this year. He's up in age now, and it's time. We will not replace him, as previously discussed. We're through attrition, we want to get down to 2 K-9s. So as a result, our training, equipment, food, vet bills, that were all reduced by 25%. The one budget category that did go up, miscellaneous, 4259. The reason that budget category increased by 7,500 is because the first time we included PPE, the personal protective equipment. That was something we ran up against with COVID-19. We weren't quite prepared for that, but we were able to utilize funds that we had in the budget. We moved some things around. So we're much better prepared now for the future. And we thought it was a good idea to consistently be prepared for that every year, whether it's COVID-19 or flu season. I think the way we prepared for it was good. We only had, in 8 months now of COVID, we had 2 officers test positive, and both of those officers have tested positive from outside the department, from their spouses who were also in emergency services. So, and we were lucky enough to keep that contained and keep everybody equipped and the area clean. Our firearms budget, 4263, we reduced that by 5,500 by utilizing a more conservative approach, a better accounting of what we need. Computer hardware, 4270, we reduced that budget by 16,000, and we did that by working closely with our IT department to identify our needs and areas where we could conserve. One of the ways that we found that we could conserve, we always need a certain amount of new computers, just from wear and tear, they go out. We found that we had an opportunity to get extended warranties on a lot of the computer equipment that we had. And we were able to extend those warranties, and we actually plan on doing that for the next 2 or 3 years with the new different computers and new warranties that we have. So for a fraction of the price, if there's a problem with computers, they'll be fixed. And if they can't be fixed, they'll be replaced on the company, not by us. So we were able to reduce there, and we should be able to reduce in that category for the next 2 or 3 years. One of the things I wanted to bring to council's attention, which I think is something that truly benefits us and is one of the things that I talked about I wanted to do when becoming chief, is in our licensing budget, 4272. We added a category which was for GPS, global positioning system. And we put that in 13 of our vehicles. We already started that. And we found that through our existing system, we were able to include that without any additional hardware. Essentially, there are different opportunities you have, which is essentially a flip of the switch from their corporate headquarters. So for $10 a month per vehicle, and I outfitted 13 vehicles, all the vehicles that are used overnight, 24 hours a day. I now have a GPS system in it where supervisors, command personnel, dispatchers can keep track of every car, where they are, speeds, how much gas that they're utilizing, the work output. I mean, as you know, I had an issue with an officer that we parted ways with, and this was one of the ways that we decided we can keep better track of our people and keep them safer. So that's for an annual cost of $1,560. We're able to do that. So I thought that was a good investment. Two categories that I'm combining here. My last two categories are vehicle equipment and vehicle purchases. We took a good hard look to see what we felt we needed to do. And I feel that we can get by with purchasing one new vehicle. And in conjunction with that, we were going to keep one of our older vehicles as a spare to help take the stress off of not having quite enough vehicles. But we do believe that this should be enough for this year. So by doing that, out of vehicle purchases, which is 4742, we were able to reduce that budget category by $80,000 by only purchasing one patrol vehicle instead of what normally we probably would have done 3 this year, or at least we would have requested that. And in conjunction with that vehicle equipment, 4275, we reduced that budget by $44,000 by only having to outfit that one vehicle. So that was pretty much the highlights, and that in conjunction with the grants that we take advantage of. And there are several: vest grants, cigarette compliance, underage drinking. I won't go through them all, but we utilize all those grants to help supplement our budget so that there are certain things that we can do that we don't have to budget for. And we've been able to consistently get those since we keep our enforcement numbers high in those categories. Are there any questions or concerns that I can address?
I just had one question, and it really is a follow-up, and it may not be a budget issue, but where just want to check in like the status of body cameras, and are we fully equipped now with all officers, or are we still in the process of that?
No, we are fully equipped. We're up and running 100%. I don't know for a certainty, but I'm still relatively sure that we are the only department in Montgomery County that have fully implemented a body camera. Some departments have done it for portions of their department, or they're still in the trial, but every officer that is out on the street has a body camera. Every detective that goes out on a search warrant or an arrest warrant is equipped with a body camera. And all of our marked vehicles are equipped with in-car cameras. So it's well integrated, it's working well, we have a good system, and we have not had any issues whatsoever.
Great. Good to hear. Anybody else have any questions for the chief?
I don't have any questions, Chief, but I did want to thank you and tell you how impressed I was that you took part in that community town hall that was area-wide for Colonial with the Colonial anti-racism and social equity people. You fielded a lot of questions, a lot of tough questions of concern from the various neighborhoods, and I was just so impressed with your information, everything you had at your fingertips, and I know it was very well received. I joined their Facebook group, and the comments were all very complimentary. So thank you for doing that for us.
My pleasure. I'm glad you liked it. It's a good experience. I mean, we enjoy doing those types of things. So there'll be many more.
Anything else? Anybody else have any questions for the chief? All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anything under miscellaneous?
I do have one unrelated to the budget question for council. I was wondering, did anybody notice that email that I sent around with from Ken Pearson asking about the group home ordinance, wondering whether or not we should also add in some licensing requirements, mention the Pennsylvania law, and I'm not sure if it's legal, but require them to file with Plymouth Township. And I wanted to know whether you want me to send that on to Mike for any further research or amendment to the ordinance before sending it to the county.
I did see that. And I guess when I saw it, my first question was that like that would probably be something that Mike would have to look at.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to seeing if that was something that, that we could consider. Only I think to ease the minds maybe of residents, at least the licensing part or the registering with us so that we know. But again, if that's something that we think we can't do, then I don't think we need to push the issue. But I think if it's something that we legally can do, I think it's worth considering. Anybody else?
I think that's something, you're right, Mike has to, flush that out and say whether it's legal for us to treat that differently than you would a regular residence.
Right, but would you be in favor of sending it to Mike for that review?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, well then
Yes,
I'll
I have
do
no
that.
reason to oppose it.
Right, okay. I just wanted to do that. So I think Mr. Pearson was looking for a response as well as, that, keeping that moving. So, okay, good. Thank you. I'll take care of that. Tim, do you have anything budget related?
I don't, just a reminder, the third and final budget meeting will be November 16th, same kind of format. That will be on the sewer funds and on the capital funds, and you'll have more information on that. That'll be the final two funds.
Right, and then the decisions for the fire companies, the sports groups, the profits, the nonprofits, the charities, all those decisions will need to be made then. So the budget can be wrapped up. And we should consider what kind of a tax increase for the building project would have to go into an ordinance, will have to be advertised before the December meeting. So I think also by that meeting in November, we're going to need to know for the advertisement, what the tax increase, millage increase should look like for next year.
I had one more question. If I remember correctly, last year with the fire companies, we tried to set up a situation where each firehouse had 2 full-time employees. And I think that's what happened last year. Now, is it the case, I think now that Plymouth is asking to make it 3? Is that correct?
They did ask for that tonight, yes.
I thought they were asking for 2 part-timers.
Oh, that's.
Yeah.
Equivalent of.
Yeah,
another
they
40
asked for
hours.
2 part-timers, right?
Well, 2
That would add
part-timers,
up.
1 full-timer.
Yeah, without benefits, but yes,
Well, they currently have 2 full-time employees, right?
correct.
Yeah,
So
but I
2
think last
part-time
year-
would be
Last
3.
year, Harmonville didn't have 2, so we gave them an extra bump to put it up to 2 in each of their houses. And Plymouth already had 2. Now Plymouth is asking for a 3rd. I just want to
But
make
I
sure.
thought that third was 2 part-timers at 20 hours each a week.
That's a full-time equivalent.
Yeah,
Yeah, but-
that would be a 3rd person.
It would be, but because they're part-timers, they're not getting benefits, right?
No, correct. But
They're getting wages, but not benefits.
I guess my point is, then next year, Harmonville is going to come and say, well, Plymouth has 3, we should have 3. And
We need those 40 more hours each. Yeah.
And Marty, I think right now Harmonville has 3 full-time employees, 2 at one house and 1 at one. Right, Tim? Am I right on that?
Last year, when they came in, they had 2, and they made a case for 3. And last year, council agreed with Harmonville to give them funding for a 3rd full-timer. Plymouth had 2 last year, they didn't ask for an extra. So basically what's happening this year is Plymouth is now asking
but Harmonville had
to
4.
get to 3 like Harmonville. Instead of 1 full-timer, they're asking for 2 part-timers, which would basically equal the full-timer.
Okay.
And Harmonville has
has
3,
3 now, and Plymouth has 2, and Plymouth wants to go up to 3. Okay,
but they have 3 in 2 buildings.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
So one station has one firefighter driver, one has 2. And also at one point, and I could clarify this with Plymouth if you want, they at one time wanted their 2 full-time guys to work 4 10-hour days. And so I don't know if these other 2 people were to pick up like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or how that's, I mean, I could ask how that was going to work. for them. Generally on weekends, you have more people available. But I know they were talking about that going into, Monday through Thursday, 10-hour shifts.
So Harmonville has 3, so it's 1.5 per station.
Mhm.
And Plymouth has 2, and they want to go up to 3.
Right.
Okay.
And I don't know how, you all feel. In past years, council would come up with some percentage increase and give the money to the fire company, and they can decide, what their salary increases are. They can decide, I guess, how many employees they can afford and how many they want to afford and that kind of a thing. I personally would stay away from, I'm giving you're allowed to have an extra driver. You're, not getting an extra driver. I think you give them their appropriation and they make their decisions. They decide what their salaries are, what their increases are, how many.
Makes sense.
Harmonville's is a little over 3%, what they're asking for.
That's how it usually was handled.
They're sort of telling us why they need it, but we don't specify when this is what we're giving. It's
right.
We're assuming they're using it for what they're saying, but that's not really our call.
Right. I don't think so, because you're
Right.
not really their employer.
Right.
Mhm.
All right.
All right. Do you have anything else, Tim?
No.
You're good? I think that might be all I have.
Yeah.
Anybody else has anything?
All right.
No, all
I guess
good?
we can adjourn.